I'd like to introduce Councillor Dave Allen from Derbyshire County Council. He is the Cabinet Member for Health and Communities, who will give the opening address.
Thanks for that introduction. I mean, I've got to be honest, my knowledge of universal credit is somewhat limited. I've obviously had a briefing for a few words I'm going to say today, and I'm going to do that now. But I hope to learn more about what it's about and the impact it's going to have on citizens of Derbyshire. This conference was well oversubscribed, and it's good to see everybody. There's quite a few people I do know, but obviously it will have an impact on us. Such a major change in supporting people, particularly on low incomes, will affect a lot of ways in which they manage their money they've got. It's a slow change, but will have major consequences. Important we fully understand those changes, and I think that's hopefully what we're going to be learning today. Begun in Derbyshire on a small scale, currently only 6 job centres so far, and more will be added in the autumn. And over the years, the government intends to radically expand the introduction, and that could be as early as more next year, and obviously in the year after. We know it will have a big effect on a wide range of people on no incomes. The significance of that would be addressed by an online and default claim forms, changes in payment schedules, more claimant responsibilities, and much tougher sanctions regime. I know sanction regime currently is causing a lot of problems, and I pick that up from my bits I hear about from food banks and obviously people for welfare rights. Universal credit implemented is critical, and I hope today we can be part of a coordinated effort to help affected residents. The introduction of a universal credit will affect everyone on low income, whether unemployed, part-time or unable to work, or in working with disability or care responsibilities. Derbyshire's starting small, and obviously that meet the government's gateway. There will be no paper claim forms for universal credit. The majority of claimants are expected to claim online, which again will have an impact, and that's where I think the library service comes in. We've got computers, and hopefully we'll have more libraries with broadband. We've put a bid in to try to get broadband. I'm fortunate, I live in Chesterfield, and I think where we are today is a fantastic facility. Chesterfield Library is, I think, one of the best in the country. It's so well used, and I thought all libraries were of a similar nature, but in some libraries in the county it's almost quicker to post a letter than use the internet. But I hope that will change. That we're dependent on BT for that, but again there's a commitment there, so people will be able to use broadband. And again, just to say about the library service, we're still an authority who supports the libraries. I know we've reduced the mobile library service as part of the cuts, which I'll mention about the cuts later, but the static library's got 45, some small, some big, but Chesterfield's the biggest, and I think it's a great facility, and I hope that we'll be able to politically keep it going, make its use, because as I said earlier, if people want to use the library, it's able to be used by organisations free, and therefore make that use, let people know about the library. As I say, people may have to wait a minimum of 5 weeks for the first payment, including housing costs, and that will have an impact on people. And again, a number of sanctions will probably increase. Now, Derbyshire has developed an anti-poverty strategy, hopefully supporting people with partners, district council, voluntary organisations, in response to the growing levels of poverty within Derbyshire and nationally. With a strategy, we support credit unions, and the credit unions in Chesterfield is relocated just around the corner, and I think it's a much better place than it was. We did say if credit unions wanted to be in libraries, then they could, but Chesterfield's got its own, and we work closely with the other credit unions. They're all very possessive of their sort of areas, and I think it would be nice to have one for the Derbyshire, but I think that's a long-term objective. But we try to support them in terms of funding and infrastructure. It's hard to believe that only a few years ago nobody had heard about food banks. I certainly hadn't really. Now in Derbyshire there's 20 odd food banks, and I think to me that's an indictment of government policies that we're the 7th richest country or something like that in the world, and we're still having people with food poverty. And again, if you listen to some of the workers here mustn't realise that working with food banks and people, what dire straits people are in when they actually go to food banks. Now what we want to progress that, and currently we're talking to an organisation called FareShare. Again, some may heard of that until about 6 months ago. I hadn't, but it's an organisation based in Leicestershire which gets food from supermarkets, fresh food, because most food banks I think realise is probably tinned or spaghetti, and man cannot live on spaghetti all your life, so it's best to get some proper food. And what they get is this fresh food, and then distribute that to food banks who have to join. We're hoping to get a centre in Homewood area in a warehouse that they'll fit out, and again then hopefully we will support food banks to join that, and then they get sort of unlimited. I mean there is a massive food out there that's available for that sort of thing. We're also looking at super kitchens. We're going to Nottingham to look at one of those where they prepare food to sell at a low price, £2 or £3 for a meal. So I think there's a lot going on. I mean, to be honest, in local government these days, there's not a lot to get excited about, but this concept of actually doing something about food really did sort of excite me. The report will be going to Cabinet, hopefully, to get that moving. I remember a bit back, Panorama were doing a programme on Derbyshire on food banks, and of course they interview a lot of people and they only show one or two. So I did a lot of interviews, never got showed. But one of the things the reporter kept pressing on, do you think food banks are here to stay? And my argument is no, we shouldn't be institutionalising this sort of level of support. There should be a sort of temporary basis. But I begin to worry that we're here for the long stay. And again, we support them, we'll help them in any way, but obviously our aim is to hope that they will not be needed in the future. There's been an increase in poverty, child poverty, old people struggling to make ends meet. And I also worry very much about younger people who have difficulty in terms of living independently. I'm sure that the benefit changes will have a big impact on that. I mean, young people do struggle, and when you hear of the amount of money that some people got left after they paid the rent or whatever, I wonder how people can actually survive. I did mention the cuts, and I'm obviously going to mention the cuts. I always make a point of mentioning that Derbyshire's got £157 million to cut at least, and that will have a major impact. It's about a third of the budget, and obviously we're going to be hit next week, when I presume the Chancellor will make it more difficult. Some of the funding we've had is through public health. Public health is now a responsibility of the County Council. It's a £35 million ring-fence budget, and there has been a bit of underspending. Now, what we've done with that underspending, we established this resource fund, which has been about £9 million this last year. And what we've used that for is to support things like food banks, credit unions. We put citizens' advice support into nearly all the surgeries. I think there's only about 2 in the county that haven't got it, into children's centres. In a sense, again, trying to highlight our priority of inequalities and deprivation. That's a major task we're fighting hard to do. But the government have come out this last couple of weeks saying we're going to cut £200 million nationally out of public health budgets. That'll affect Derbyshire potentially by £2.5 million. So again, our ability to be creative with some of this money will be reduced. So we've got big problems. But it's not very cheerful to talk about, so we've got to look in a positive way. I said to somebody the other week, I was on holiday, and I said it's 59 months to go. And they looked at me and I says, until we've got a Labour government. So there's now about 58 months to go. So yeah, I live in hope. But what we want to, in my view, we need a Labour government which actually look at some of the issues we're tackling. I think Derbyshire hasn't, apart from a blip for 4 years when the Tories were in power, I think we've had policies which have hopefully supported people. We're one of the few authorities, or virtually, who did have a free home health service. We're one of the few authorities who actually still have direct Labour home care services and home and residential homes. So to me there's a lot of principles there that I believe local authorities should still be providers and not just commissioners of service, and I hate the word commissioners as well. So what we're going to do today, today's conference is to explore how we can work together to support the changes that are being brought in through universal credit. We have a chance to learn more about the impact from Derby City, and hopefully we'll leave a lot better understanding of what it's all about. I can give you my commitment that the Labour Control Council will do everything it can to preserve services and to highlight the government's inefficiencies and inadequacies in their policies, which I think are primarily in old, young and people with disadvantages. So that's my bit. I hope it's a start, and I hope I learn much more about universal credit today. So thank you very much for listening, and I hope it's a good day.